Hello everyone and welcome back to the Cyclocross Social podcast. Today we're going to be talking about the first round of the X2O Trophy which took place on the Koppenberg. The mythical Koppenbergcross, it delivered honest but brutal racing once again today. Unfortunately, Issam isn't here. This is normally where I would introduce him, but he has had a family situation which has required him to travel to Morocco last minute. He won't be there on Sunday. I did not have time to find a replacement. This happened very late last night, and Friday is also a day on which many people need to work. I'm lucky I don't need to go to the university. So the best thing I came up with is Jessica. Jessica is an AI voice, and she will be asking me a number of questions.
Hello, Noah. Let's talk about some cyclocross today.
Good, of course, this is far from perfect. It's not the normal discussion between me and Issam. It will be pretty much just my opinions, but I think this is better than just having a monologue, super static podcast. So let's get into it. The Koppenbergcross, it's for many Belgians still the opening of the real cyclocross season. It's November, it's a bank holiday. Large crowds start coming to the cross from here. The weather starts deteriorating. It was grey today. I look outside all day. I haven't seen a bit of sun. Fog, low clouds, grey. Quite miserable actually, but that's also what cyclocross riders like. For instance, Toon Aerts. He has been very good on the Koppenberg in the past, and today was no different. In Overijse he had a tough day, but he complained about the weather conditions. It was too hot for him. Today, none of that. Despite starting at the back, he fought his way forward in an interesting opening phase of the race. Jorben Laurijse had the best start. It's not a name we see at the front of the race every day, but he opened a significant gap in the first lap. Thibaut Nys, Lars van der Haar and Pim Ronhaar, all riders of the Baloise Trek Lions, had a bad start. They were with Aerts, who started several rows behind them. Paul Sauzeduo, Iserbyt and Michael van Toerenhout tried to capitalize on this, setting a relatively high pace, but it was of little effect. After 2 laps, we went to a situation where there were 5 leaders. Toon Aerts, Iserbyt, Thibaut Nys, Lars van der Haar and Michael van Toerenhout. Punches were traded a couple of laps with Iserbyt, van Toerenhout, Nys all pushing it a couple of times, but the real decisive moment came just about halfway through the race. After 35 minutes, Lars van der Haar went on the attack as the rest of the leading group went into the pit zone. Nys was leading the riders to the pit zone and saw his teammate go. He slowed down through the corner and the exit of the pit zone, and by the time Iserbyt could react, van der Haar already had a 5-second gap. Van der Haar said that he preferably had waited a little bit longer with attacking, but once he had that attack, he decided to go all in. That was very smart of van der Haar because he pushed Iserbyt to the limit. Iserbyt was going hard, trying to keep that gap 5-10 seconds, but then Iserbyt bonked. At the end of the lap, Lars van der Haar had a 30-second lead over Iserbyt. From there on, he could control the race and take victory. Iserbyt repacked himself, took second place. Nys was the one who actually bonked a bit in the final part of the race. He fell back, would finish 4th, just ahead of Michael van Toerenhout. Toon Aerts, who had a bad moment when van der Haar attacked, also repacked himself in the second part of the race and took 3rd place. So the top 5 was Lars van der Haar ahead of Iserbyt, then Toon Aerts, Thibaut Nys and Michael van Toerenhout.
Gaining 30 seconds in one attack, that was a very impressive ride by Lars van der Haar, wasn't it?
Yes, this was a very impressive ride by Lars van der Haar. Don't forget that 2 seasons ago he won here. I recall very well that he overtook Michael van Toerenhout when the commentators had already packed their bags. They were ready to go. Van Toerenhout had it all covered. He was going to take home the flowers, the kisses, but none of that. Last year, van der Haar was also very good here. It's a bit overlooked this week. There was a lot of talks about Thibaut Nys, but van der Haar last year was arguably as strong as Thibaut Nys, but he played the team game, eventually allowing Nys to win. Nys in some way returned the favor here, but ultimately you can't say that Nys really made a difference here. If you look at the lap time van der Haar put in, his explosiveness after that attack, yes, van der Haar got the initial gap to Nys, but he was able to expand that so much more when Nys wasn't able to block the chase anymore. So van der Haar was simply the strongest today, And what you saw was that he took use of a pattern where riders at the front of the race put in an effort and paid their price for it. We saw, for instance, in the opening phase of the race, I'm not going to talk about Jorben Laurijs here, he was clearly out of space, but Iserbyt and Michael van Toerenhout put in an effort trying to distance the Baloise riders. It doesn't work for them. They are caught and then they need a bit of time to repack themselves. In that time, we see Toon Aerts put the pressure. But Toon Aerts, at the moment that Van der Haar attacks, also pays the price. Nys was pushing it the lap before Van der Haar went. And he needed to continue that during the attack of Van der Haar and then fell back. Van der Haar, on the other hand, it was a bit risky, and I don't think he did it out of luxury. He didn't have a good start. He is a slow starter. He needs a bit of time to warm up. But he moved up through the field and kept quiet. He sticked in the wheels, didn't do too much, and then eventually, once his time was there, he hits it. And we've seen this before in Beringen, and in Overijse he also came forward in the final lap, but he was a bit angry that he didn't have the balls in his words to do anything that soon, but it works. He's patient, and that is what makes the difference. His patience helps him win races where others blow up. And you can repack yourself, like we see with Aerts. He blew up, but recovered to third, which is a very good result for him. But Van der Haar really has the experience. Sometimes it doesn't work out. So it could have gone wrong today if they would have taken off earlier in the race. In Overijse, that was kind of the case. But his patience and persistence are key to his success.
Some people are saying Van der Haar is in his best form ever. Do you agree with that?
Best form ever, I don't know. I can't look at his power numbers. What is clear is that he is in very good form. If you compare it to a couple of seasons ago, he's always been good in this phase of the season, but the difference now is that he's not alone against Baloise riders all the time. You see quite often that he can count on support, like today from Thibaut Nys, and that he's not always fighting against them. Also, just the general dominance of Baloise has been broken because their numbers have declined. They don't have that many riders at the front anymore after the departure of Zweek. So those things come together. Again, it's super hard to say if this is the best Van der Haar ever, but he is certainly in very good form and he could be going for a third European title this weekend, although that course is completely different.
Then Eli Iserbyt. The Belgian champion finished second, but before we talk about his result, we have to mention the incident. In the second lap, someone threw beer at him. What's your opinion on that?
That's, of course, completely unacceptable. There is no place in cyclocross or in any sport for fans, hooligans, or we should call them, behaving like this. You have all right to disagree with Eli Iserbyt over his actions in Beringen. You have all the reason to dislike Eli Iserbyt. You don't need to like them, but spitting on riders or throwing beer at them, Van der Poel has been through the same a couple of times. I remember in Diegem 2 seasons ago or in Hulst last year. It's unacceptable. I was happy to see that the police escorted him right off the course, and I hope that in some way he gets banned from just attending cyclocross races, because if you go to a cross race just to throw beer at a rider, expensive beer I must even say, then I don't know what you're doing there. If you want to make a statement, then do it like these people standing at the finish line. They brought a wheel and they brought a sign, and the sign said, Eli, kick this wheel. So if you want to do that, fine. It's a funny way of making a statement, but you don't throw anything at riders.
Thankfully, the other spectators did behave themselves, and there were a lot of them. This might have been the first race with more than 10,000 spectators this season. Iserbyt said it took him 2 laps to refocus after the beer came in his face. He was disappointed with second place in the end. Do you understand that?
Absolutely. Iserbyt is a champion, he's a winner, he always wants to win, so it makes a lot of sense to be disappointed. The Koppenberg is a prestigious race, and he wants to win it. He's done it before, but he wants to win it again. So it makes a lot of sense. Before the race, he said that he wanted to apply a tactic of waiting for 20 minutes, being cautious, seeing, do I have the legs to compete for the win? If yes, I'll go for it. If not, I'll race economically to focus on the European Championships. Due to circumstances, he couldn't really follow those tactics. He seized the opportunity with the Balois track lines behind, stormed the front, and from there on was forced to take a different tactic. He looks in fine form, but he does not seem to be a cut above the rest, because nobody is a cut above the rest. And that was kind of similar last year as well. The level of the cyclocross field of full-time cyclocross riders has become higher, the top has become deeper, which only benefits the cross, and I would say it's a very good sign that Iserbyt doesn't easily win all these races anymore. I do understand that he's a bit upset, but again, the European Championships will be a different race. It's a fast race, it will be a tactical race, and he will have a new opportunity there. He did beat Toon Aerts, and I think Toon Aerts can be quite happy with his ride as well. I think the Koppenberg is a very honest race. Everybody, barring any big mechanicals or flat tires, finishes roughly where they deserve to finish. Iserbyt second, Aerts third. I would say that is a very deserved result if you see the course of the race.
Aerts finished ahead of Nis. Before the race, there was a lot of talk about the young Nis who won here last year. Is fourth place a huge disappointment then?
I wouldn't say it's a huge disappointment for Thibaut Nys. Yes, he came here to win, but following that win in Overijse, expectations were probably a bit too high here as well. He made a decent impression, but I think he blew up in that attack. Furthermore, he started on 30mm tires, but after switching to 33mm, everything seemed to be going less smooth. It just looked a bit more, just off. And I get why he changed to wider tires, because he had this phase and he made a lot of mistakes, and then he took the lead, and I feel like he just blew up trying to follow Iserbyt in the chase. Nys is not at his best form yet, and probably after that win in Overijse there was this sense of, oh, he's going to be back, and the media is very reactionary, because on the women's side, Alvarado was woman of the season, and then now Van Empel is back, and we'll talk about that a bit more. But it's the same here with Nys. He wins in Overijse, and for a week I read articles that Nys is the huge top favorite for Koppenberg and European Championships. And now, because he doesn't win on the Koppenberg, he's not a favorite for the European Championships anymore. I disagree with that type of scoreboard journalism. For me, he's still the favorite for the European Championships. The course there is completely different, and that will factor in. Koppenberg is a very honest cross, a very brutal cross. I don't know if this is the best type of cross for Thibaut Nys. He's a very technical rider. Yes, the downhills here have become a bit more technical over time, but still, he can't really use the technicality of this course to his advantage. I don't know if he is perfect for these type of races. He is still young, he will still develop, and we will see what that brings. But of the Koppenberg, there is just one. There's just one race that is this physically demanding. Yes, Namur has climbing, but Namur also has off-cambers and super technical downhills where he can compensate. It's a different type of test. The exam on the Koppenberg is so unique. Again, you don't get another test like this. So the race is so atypical that I would not draw too many conclusions from this race for the rest of the season. It does confirm, but we already knew that Nys is not as good as he was early in the season last year. But again, time will tell if that's a good thing or a bad thing. We can draw some conclusions in December, and honestly, really just after the World Championships in Louvain. Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Lars van der Haar took the win ahead of Iserbyt and Toon Aerts. Thibaut Nys finished 4th ahead of Michael van Toerenhout. Pim Ronhaar finished 6th ahead of Lander Looks. Toon van der Bos, Victor van der Putten and Jens Adams complete the top 10.
Pim Ronhaar finished in 6th place. Is that a good or bad result for him?
I would say it's a good result considering where he came from. And then I don't mean where he came from in terms of Lyme disease and crashing into a ravine. We've been over that part. But purely if you look at this race, he was quite far down in the opening phase. He made a couple of mistakes, but then steadily moved through the field, kept his lap times very consistent. And I think that is an important takeaway for Ronhaar. Yes, maybe I would have expected a little bit more after that performance in Heerde, but again, this is a very, very brutal race. And the same that I said about Nijs also goes for Ron Haar. He is still relatively young, he's a second year elite, and honestly, I don't know how much the Koppenberg suits him. Because this race is so unique, it's so demanding, the climbing sections are so long, you're climbing for over a minute on the cobbles of the Koppenberg. It means that it's hard to compare. You can be good in Namur, but you can struggle here on the Koppenberg. Inside, I do think that Ron Haar is a rider that does better on the Koppenberg than that he could show today. He didn't have everything go his way. As I said, he made a number of mistakes. He went into the course tape early on in the race, for instance. But it's a decent takeaway. He is only just getting underway this season. Koppenberg, maybe we're still a bit early. He will improve over time and then hopefully for him be able to compete for podiums and victories as the season progresses.
Should Ron Haar then be happier than Van Thourenhout despite getting a worse result?
I would say so, yes. Van Thourenhout, okay, he won in Ardooien, but that's a midweek race in Belgium. It's not prestigious. If Iserbyt is talking about, yes, I won in Heerde, but I want to win a classified race, then I think for Van Thourenhout we should hold him to a similar standard as reigning European champion. He's not been great this season so far, and honestly, I'm starting to worry a little bit. Yes, he was good in Beringen. He was okay in Ruddervoorde, but I haven't really seen it after Beringen. Even in Beringen, a good Van Thourenhout would have finished that. Van der Haar would not have come back to him. And last year, it was also not a great season for Van Thourenhout. We have to be honest. He peaked extremely well for the championships. He won the European title. Yes, there was some luck involved. Iserbyt helped him get a gap. Yes, Van der Haar crashed just at the moment he was looking to come across. That is not really luck, that is just a mistake, and you can capitalize on that. But after that, it got quite grim. DNF, outside of the top 10, deep outside of the top 10 in Antwerpen. Another DNF in the Christmas period. At the Belgian Championships, okay, he repacks himself, he is in the mix, he finishes third, he plays some role in Iserbyt winning the title, and then he hits the peak for the World Championships, where he finishes third after already finishing second in Benidorm. But again, it wasn't there last year, and I'm starting to think this year, will we see a continuation? Is Van Thourenhout on the decline? But is that masked because he became European champion last year? That title last year, together with a good result at Worlds, really saved his season. Over the season, he didn't do that well. Sweeck faced a lot of criticism. Okay, Sweeck was probably over the season a tad worse than Van Thourenhout, but really the difference between the seasons was that Van Thourenhout had the titles to show for and Sweeck had nothing to show for. But yeah, Van Thourenhout, as I said, I'm not sure. I think he is not as good as he was 2 seasons ago. Of course, he can surprise, he can improve when the weather gets better for him. We should see him a bit more to the fore of the race, but it's not looking that great.
Van Thourenhout races for Pauwels Sauzen Bingoal. There was some news about a new sponsor, right?
Yes, correct. Pauwels Sauzen has announced a press conference on November 6th, that is next week, in which they will announce a new sponsor. I have no information what this sponsor is going to be. Did my best, but I couldn't get anything from my sources. Pauwels Sauzen is, as you know, co-sponsored by Bingo. It's a title sponsor, but betting advertisement will be banned in Belgium, at least in title sponsors and at the front of jerseys. Bingo will remain a partner of the team and they will remain visible on the back of the jerseys, but of course that gives them way less publicity than being a title sponsor, so they are also cutting back their financial contribution. Let's talk about the women's race then. World champion Fem van Empel was back on business. After a somewhat rough start to the season, she was never bad, but she also couldn't really get those wins together. She won in Beringen, but then took a number of podium places. Everything went her way today on the Koppenberg. In the first lap, she and Lucinda Brandt took turns setting the pace, but in the second lap, the world champion went solo. She was slightly stronger uphill and gained a little bit of time as well in the downhills. Lucinda Brandt was, according to her own team manager Sven Nys, on the wrong tires. She was racing a middle profile between the Grifo and the Rhino. That eventually meant that Brandt switched to the Rhino tire thread. From there the gap kind of stabilized, but Van Empel also had no real reason to go all out anymore, as the European Championships are moments away from us. They are in less than 48 hours. Van Empel took the win ahead of Brandt. Sara Casasola, the Italian champion, ended third.
Van Empel won quite comfortably. Did you expect that?
It's of course easy to say in hindsight and with the results in front of me, but yes, Van Empel was my favorite. I did expect her to win today. If you listen to the Overijse podcast, you will recall me making a comment along these lines. In Overijse, Van Empel was at least as strong, but probably a bit stronger than Brandt on the uphill sections, but she lost everything in the technical sections. Here on the Koppenberg, Brandt was again not able to match Van Empel on the uphill sections. There are less technical downhills here in the Koppenbergcross, so that gave Van Empel the edge. What also helped is what I mentioned in the summary, that Brandt was on the wrong tire thread for a while, which meant that she couldn't gain any time in the downhills. Once she switched, she did gain a bit of time there, but again, Van Empel did the uphill sections much, much faster.
So, do you disagree with Brandt's comments in the post-race interview? She claimed she was as strong as Van Empel today.
Yes, I would disagree with them because the data doesn't back her claims there. Of course, she doesn't have anything to look at and she's just going off her feeling. But if you just look at where she got dropped in the race, that was on an uphill section. If you look at the times on the Koppenberg, okay, there was not much of a difference, but Van Empel was slightly stronger there. Okay, you can make the case, Brandt stabilized the gap after switching tires, and she made the point of, once I switched tires, I got into the rhythm on the bumpy course and everything worked out. But Brandt had every reason to push because she is going for this classification. She wants to win it. Van Empel, as far as I know, is not targeting this classification because she's not going to race every race of this classification. She's for sure not going to race the rounds after the World Championships this year because she admitted, or at least her coach Jan Bove admitted, to them taking a different approach to this season with the goal of being better for the Spring Classics, the Tour of Flanders, so those things don't match each other. And Van Empel is also going to be taking a break after the European Championships to train. And doing that break, that training, means that she's going to miss more rounds in this trophy. Van Empel could sit up and take it relatively easy, saving energy for the European Championships, whereas Brandt had every incentive to push. That means that it makes sense that everything comes together more. But if you look at the lap times, it's 22 seconds in one lap, and then the lap after it goes to 28, and then it's 31. So once Van Empel had the win locked up, she could cruise, take it easy, and then I can get the perception where Brandt is coming from. Hey, the gap stabilized, but I don't think it holds any truth.
You mentioned something about her road campaign. On the Belgian TV, the commentators argued it was too early for her to focus on her road career. What's your take on that? Is it too early?
No, and I don't really understand where that notion is coming from. Van Empel is the same age as Van Anrooy, who has shown great things on the road already. She is the same age as Puk Pieterse, who has shown great things on the road already. She is not that much younger than Catablanca Vash, who has shown great things on the road already. I don't think this is too early for Van Empel to focus on her road career. I don't understand where that is coming from at all, actually, because the past 2 seasons Van Empel has been underwhelming on the road. Yes, road racing is different than cyclocross, but if you look at the power that Van Empel has, she should be able to do well on the road. She is not the most technically gifted cyclocross rider. She's not a rider that thrives off-road because of her technique. She's one that thrives off-road because of her power. Yes, power is different in off-road than on the road. I don't know Van Empel's ability to recover or her ability to sustain fatigue. How good is her resistance towards an end of a longer race? Is she still able to produce that power? I don't think she's a pure sprinter, but she has shown some promising things on the road as well. So there is potential for her. She has shown the thing. She was decent in the Tour de Romandie and Tour de l'Avenir last year. She should be able to work there. So especially from a team like Visma, which has a high priority on the road, it makes sense that they want to prepare her as good as possible for that season.
We will know how her approach pans out next year. For now, this win catapults her to become the top favorite for the European Championships. Is that fair?
I don't think so. I mentioned something about this before, but it's just lazy scoreboard journalism, really. Alvarado wasn't there. The European Championships are a completely different course, completely different race, completely different circumstances. It's not that today's result is irrelevant, but if you analyze the performances of Van Empel in Overijse, you knew that she was okay physically, but that the problem was technically. It's kind of the way like the numbers always describe the momentum. It's the same with political polling. If candidate A pulls 1% ahead of candidate B, but the next time candidate B pulls 1% ahead of candidate A, there's all this talk about shift of momentum and a big change. But it's all within a margin of error. Statistically, you can't even speak from a difference, because if you would have repeated that same poll at the exact same time, it could have given a different result. That's how the margin of error works. It's the same with the results in front or behind Van Empel's name. There's a 1 now, and that changes the outlook, whereas that 2 in Overijse could have also told you that she was in good form already. Just like those political polls, regardless of who's 1% ahead, both show that it's a super tight race.
Italian champion Sara Casasola finished third. Can she be satisfied with her result?
For Casasola, it doesn't get much better than the Koppenberg. This is, I feel, the type of course where she does best. Koppenberg, Namur, climbing heavy races. Maybe it will turn out that she's slightly better on flat muddy courses, but it will be marginal. She's very good here. I will say this though. I'm a bit worried about Casasola, and not because her results are not good. This is her first season of doing a full Belgian international cross calendar. She's not used to this intensity, and she races a lot. She's done 5 races, and the European Championships, which is a challenging double, is going to be her 6th race already. Where for Van Empel, Brandt and Alvarado you can see small improvements every week, I don't really see that for Casasola. It looks like she's flattening out a little bit. I'm worried that that workload, that heavy racing schedule will take a toll on her at some point, and I will happily be proven wrong, because I like to see an Italian do well. In fact, I like anybody who doesn't have a Dutch or Belgian flag behind their name do well in cyclocross, but it is a tough step to make, to adjust from what you did before, occasional World Cups, doing a number of Italian races, to a lot of double weekends, tough and demanding courses. I hope that everything goes well. She should be satisfied with her result. I'm just curious to see what will come from it later this season. Finishing behind Brandt is no surprise and should also not be a shame. I think Brandt, for that matter, can also be quite happy with her ride, and we will see it at the European Championships. It should be a very interesting race there. Let's look at the entire top 10 then. Fem van Empel took the win ahead of Lucinda Brandt and Sara Casasola. Catablanca Vache finished 4th. It was an interesting race by her. She was fighting with Casasola for the podium spot, blew up, looked to be overtaken by Annemarie Worst, but repacked herself and finished 4th. Annemarie Worst finished 5th in her first race back. Betsema finished 6th ahead of Xaide van Xinay, Kiona Krabbe, Anna Kay and Jamie de Beer.
Annemarie Worst finished 5th in her first race back after a COVID infection. This race is not an easy one to start your season with, is it?
No, not at all. The Koppenberg is probably the hardest race to start your season with. It's just you, your bike, and this steep climb, and good luck. Suffer. I will say this, they cut Annemarie Worst lucky here because the race was a lap too short for the woman. Sorry, a sub 40 minutes race for woman elite in 2024. What are we doing? The races have been expanded to 45 minutes if there's junior women. Really, junior women should have their own race. Yes, looking at you all Belgian organizers, putting on multiple races for men, but only one for women. It's time to pay your fair share in development and else not complain that you have very few female talents coming through. But still, even with that rule, this race should have been close to 45 minutes, and it wasn't. With one lap more, they would have been way closer. They would have been at roughly 48, 49 minutes. So that's what they should have gone for, but they didn't for some reason. That is lucky for Worst, but no, back to her performance. She can be happy with this as a first race. It is a rough first race. At the same time, I do want to be wary. You often see riders in their first race back from an illness or an injury have this temporary boost. They are fresher than other riders. They are eager to show themselves, and that helps them in a result that might not reflect their full form. The coming weeks will tell us where Annemarie Worst really stands against the best riders in the world.
Worst finished ahead of Betsema. Last year, Betsema finished second here. Now she was 4 minutes behind the winner. She has had a bad start to the season. What is going on with her?
There's no illness or injury, anything in that regard that is holding Betsema back. She just doesn't appear to be good enough at the moment, and that is a struggle for herself. In the episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast about the Nacht van Woerden, we had a short interview with her where she acknowledged that she struggled with that a lot last year. And last year, there was at least that crash ahead of the season. There was some real explanation as to why she wasn't in the best form. Now she doesn't have that. I question why she started on the Koppenberg. She's forfeited for the European Championships in Pontevedra because she doesn't have the form, in her own words. I question why she's here and not training. She's out of contract. That expires on the 31st of January, so there will need to be some clarity there. And it doesn't help that then things don't go her way here. The Koppenberg is a good course for her. Last year she was second. It was a bit of a highlight in a tough time. Yes, the start list was way less strong than it was today, but still, it was at least something to take with as a positive, and now that isn't there. I think the level in the women's field has just been raised, and Betsema has fallen behind.
Why do you think Betsema has struggled to make the progression other riders have been able to make?
On one hand, there's the physical aspect. Denise Betsema is in her young 30s, so it's hard for her to make progression. The younger riders will develop and can learn a lot more. Betsema is in her 30s, so that doesn't really work the same way. She, unlike Lucinda Brandt, doesn't come from a road racing background, so she cannot improve by refining her technical skills that much. That explains part of it. On the other hand, we have the road racing aspect. This week there was an interview with Betsema about her contract expiring. In that interview, there were quotes from people in Pauwelsausen saying that Betsema's bad start to the cross season was partially down to a lacking road campaign. They said Betsema doesn't want to race on the road, and that as a modern day cyclocross rider, you cannot be good on the road and be very good in the cyclocross. You need to be on the road to be a good cyclocross rider, and Betsema isn't on the road. The reason why Betsema doesn't like doing road racing that much is because she wants to spend time with her family. She's a mother of children. She lives in Texel, an island, and that's in the north of the Netherlands. She likes it there. She wants to be there in the summer and doesn't want to be on the road that much. And that doesn't mean racing the road, or on the road, away from home. She tried it a bit, racing for Cheval Mare in 2022, but she didn't really like it. And there is definitely something to say for that argument. I'm not gonna blame Betsema for prioritizing her family over her sport, but some choices do have consequences, and I do agree with the notion that a bigger road campaign will help you become a better cyclocross rider.
You already mentioned it, but her contract is expiring at the end of the year. Do you think she will stay with Pauwelsausen, or should she move elsewhere?
There's two parts to this question. First of all, what does Betsema want? And second, what does Pauwelsauser want? The question what Betsema wants is center, because would she want to stay at Pauwelsauser? What does she want to make from her career? Is she fine with falling down the ladder slowly but surely, fighting for back-end top 10 positions? Or is she really eager to make another step, to make a big push to fight for top 5 and podium places again? That's the first part. The second part is, does Pauwelsauser want to keep Betsema? Personally, I have my doubts. I don't really see Pauwelsauser extend Betsema. This is not the first season that she's struggling a little bit. Mette Penninge is a very business-orientated manager. I don't see him keep Betsema just because she's been part of the team for so long. That being said, I do think that Betsema should be able to find another team. She also said it herself. She has offers from multiple teams. I think it would be a good step for her because I said this about Annemarie Vorst last year. A move elsewhere, new trainer might re-incentivize her career. I don't know what teams have offered Betsema a contract, but I think, again, it depends what she wants. But Van der Meulen de Coaster, I think, would be a good place for her. She could be combining a role of guiding young riders with racing herself, and that is, I feel, from my experience at least, something that would fit for Betsema. Again, I don't know if they offered her a contract, I know what other offers she has, but I feel like we're probably going to head to a situation where she's going to be parting ways with Pauwelsauser after a long and successful partnership. And while we are on the contract front, I would still like to say that Jamie de Beer had... And while we're talking about contracts, I would like to mention that Jamie de Beer, who finished 10th today, has been picked up by the Heizomaat Raad team. I mentioned her story a couple of weeks ago. Raised in the youth, is a mom to 3 children, has only picked up cycling again this year, raced for a Dutch club team. I argued it would be a good signing. I don't know if anybody of Heizomaat listens to this podcast. I don't want to give ourselves too much credit here, regardless if they took it from us or just have good scouts. It's a very clever signing by them, and I think that the team will have quite some benefit from her. She should be improving, maybe not as much this season. She blew up quite hard in today's race, but definitely next year, if she builds her base, continues to more racing, she should be improving quite nicely.
Finally, the European Championships take place this Sunday. What do today's results tell you for that race?
I think I've articulated a couple of times already. Not that much. The course is just completely different, so I will stick with the preview podcast. I would argue most of the things we said there are still relevant. The biggest change is that a couple of riders are not starting due to illness or other reasons, but that's something we didn't know when we recorded that. For the rest, I would definitely stick with what's in that episode. There was more racing today. I will give you the results of those races before signing off. There was a race in Dijon. There was a win in the men's race by Valentin Remondet ahead of Damien Betton and Nicolas Reculot. The women's race was won by Amandine Vidon ahead of Alexandra Valade and Perrine Clausel. There was also racing in Firenze on the Mugello circuit actually. Christian Cominelli took the win ahead of Tommaso Caffieri and Ettore Pra. The women's race was won by Carlotta Borello ahead of Elisabeth Brandau and Rebecca Garibaldi. Those were the races for today. Thanks everyone for listening. We're going to close this episode of the Cyclocross Social podcast now. Bit different format without Issam. Hopefully I will have found a replacement by Sunday for the European Championships. Thanks everyone for listening, and see you guys on Sunday to cover the European Championships. Goodbye.